do talk a lot about phosphorus, but something that also impacts our way of life is mercury pollution. We have, we're always told, like, look, you got to cut down on how many fish you eat, and then the animals that eat the fish have mercury, and as you go up the food chain, the levels of mercury increase. So by the time it gets to my belly, you have very, very high levels of mercury. So that's another, I don't know what you call it, like nutrient or chemical that's getting into the life cycle. You know, I'm not too familiar with the Central Everglades Planning Project. I know it's been discussed. I need to read up on it, but no, I don't know the details. It is because you have, I mean, you have the Army Corps of Engineers promoting a very massive replumbing of the existing canal and all of that. And for me, a very major intervention on existing structures and canals and things like that is a massive undertaking. I'm skeptical simply because, like, look, where's the money going to come from? Are you really going to stick to the plan? How many times have plans like the Everglades Restoration Plan been revised already? So for me, I'm skeptical because you have the ability to paint a really good picture and alternative and solution, but just because you can envision something doesn't mean you're going to be able to implement it. And maybe the political will may change by people that are in office or leaving office. Maybe things can happen to kind of derail that economically. So, I mean, I'm skeptical. I would like to see what they do. But I think that whatever happens needs to be concerned with the perspective of the people that live there. I would really welcome the support of the South Florida community in terms of Everglades restoration. And how can they do that? You know, there's the traditional process of contacting your representatives, whether they're House of Representatives or senators, the people in Congress. That's one way of doing it. But I think that we really need to initiate a discussion at all levels. I think that there needs to be grassroots efforts in this sort of thing. I think people need to be educated in that. There's the physical act of visiting the Everglades and becoming familiar with it, because once you get out into this area where I live and other areas like the Big Cypress National Preserve and things like that, you're really moved by the natural beauty of the environment. But aside from that appreciation of the beauty of the place, there's also a spiritual healing and connection that can be fostered and cultivated. There's a lot of recreational opportunities that can be found here. You can go camping, hiking, canoeing, hunting at certain times of the year. So I think what I'm getting at is building a relationship with the natural environment. Aside from that, you also have to understand that it really supports the urban and suburban communities and that way of life. So understanding that it's possible for you to live there because of the vibrancy and health of the natural environment like the Florida Everglades is an important educational thing that needs to be shared with people, because you have immigrants and things like that that might not have a natural connection with the region, but I think that once they understand that their way of life in the city is possible because of the vitality of the Everglades, I think that's something that they can appreciate. Aside from that, coming out here and learning about the Miccosukee way of life is another way of beginning to support our efforts. There's a lot of ways that you can come out here and learn about how we're maintaining our traditions and our language. By coming out and visiting us, we welcome that. We want you to come out and take an airboat ride or to visit our Miccosukee Indian Village. We have a lot of Miccosukes that can do that for you. So come on out and visit us. Talk to your political representatives, establish a relationship with the natural environment, and work within your own communities through the arts, through activism, through spirituality, through recreational activities. I don't know, I'm kind of an optimist like that. I'm not familiar with the new amendments. I gotta educate myself on that. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah. But I think that.
but are you familiar with the act, with the law?
Not in
Kind of.
detail, not in detail. But you know what? I think that the people that are causing the pollution definitely need to pay their fair share of contributing to the solution, which is talking with people like the sugar companies and things like that. Like, look, it's because of your farms and your agricultural interests that's causing the pollution. So I think that you need to improve your professional standards and practices so that you have less of a negative impact on the land and the communities that live there. So you made the mess, you should contribute to cleaning it up. I think that the situation should be that the government regulates industry, sugar industry, and enforces the environmental laws, but that's not the situation. It's kind of like the other way around. Industry and sugar is manipulating the political process to benefit their business and their profits and their bottom line. So they influence the political process, they influence the politicians, they influence the legislation. So I think it's totally backwards. Yeah, water management, water usage, although that's very complicated, but that doesn't mean that that should stop us from learning about it, because it definitely impacts the people that live in South Florida, Miami, Miccosukee, because you have water that is not only on the land and flowing over the land like you see in the Everglades, but you also have water that's flowing underground. You have various levels of aquifers underneath us as well. And I'm learning about this stuff all the time. You have the water that goes into the sewers and the pipes and things like that. Some of that water is flushed out directly into the Atlantic, so you can see aerial views of the storm water that's black and going into the ocean and things like that. But that's not the only place where all the water goes. Some of the water that's used by the city, things like the water that's flushed from your toilet or it goes down your sink and things like that, is also flushed into the aquifer deep underground. You have two levels of aquifers. And so that kind of makes me worried too, because we're putting all of our dirty water down there. But we really need to look at that. I mean, all of these levees and canals and things like that were originally built decades ago to kind of control the flooding. So it was like a flood control project. And then you come in and kind of replumb the place for other purposes. So, I mean, it's the whole seepage and potential flooding or potential drying up of canals and all of that is definitely something that we need to be educated about and address. And then you also just have the general saltwater intrusion from the oceans coming into the land, which was used to be freshwater. So you have basically the ocean pushing into the fresh waters because that flow, which is the river of grass, is not pushing the saltwater back. So as you reduce the Everglades, the saltwater comes in more and more into the lands and things like that. So all of these are things that need to be addressed properly and that we need to educate ourselves about and that we need to care about because it affects our way of life. And then you have projections of sea level rise and things like that. And so just because you have these very doom and gloom scenarios should not prevent us from doing the work that we need to do to clean up the water and restore flows, because I think all of that will help to address that. If we want to kind of address the distribution and the quantity and timing of water, let's start by cleaning out the culverts. You have a lot of culverts, maybe like 19 sets of culverts, which are the pipes that run underneath Highway 41, the Tamiami Trail. It's a very inexpensive process. You want to build a $300 million bridge, or you want to clean out a $6 million culvert. And I think $6 million is a very reasonable price to pay to kind of address the imbalance in the water levels. So let's spend our money wisely, and let's respect the communities like my father's family, the Bird Clan, and my other friends in the community, the Panther Clan. Let's not interfere with their privacy and their way of life by building these monster bridges. Let's do something reasonable like that. It's reasonable, it's cost effective, and it makes sense. It's respectful of the people that live there. Let's clean out the culverts. Also, let's put some money into cleaning out the vegetation that kind of overgrows just south of the S12 structures near the national park, like Shark Valley area, and the places where I have my my modern houses, which is along the Tamiami Trail, the Minkasuki Reservation. And then we have our traditional villages in the Everglades. Let's do something reasonable like that. Let's do something cost effective like that. And let's do something respectful to my family like that. Because of the changes in the changes in the environment over time, we have had to move closer and build our community along the Tamiami Trail. We maintain those villages still deep in the Water Conservation Area 3A for purposes like hunting, for purposes of teaching our children and the next generation our practices and our customs, and also for maintaining our spiritual connection not only with the land, but also sending our prayers to the Breathmaker through the ceremonies that we have throughout the year. So yeah, we have a modern way of life with satellite dishes and internet access and things like that along the Tamiami Trail, but we also have a traditional way of life in the Everglades with access and connections to the Breathmaker and the environment and things like that in the Everglades as well. So the area where my family lives, we kind of have like two houses, the modern houses along the reservation and the traditional villages in the Everglades. And the only way to get to the traditional villages in the Everglades is by airboat. I mean, if you wanted to have a canoe, you can do that, but that's not very practical because that might take a couple of days to get out there. So the airboats are convenient and they're noisy, but it's not so much of an impact on the land. It's just noisy, but that's how we get out there these days. We get around in airboats. We visit the different villages that we maintain, and we also visit the different gardens that we have where we grow things like corn and squash and things like that, pumpkins. We also have bananas, swamp apples. My father's family from the Bird Clan has an area that's going to be directly impacted in terms of like privacy and things like that. And not only is it a privacy issue, but it's also going to directly impact their access to the village. I mean, the original Tamiami Trail, when it was built in 1928, split the village in half. So it went directly through their house.
Right.
That was back in the 1920s. And now you have this proposed Tamiami Trail bridging, which is not only going to continue the split of it, but it's going to be like a giant looking down on them, a big foot stomping their way through the village. I see and support the work that my Minkasuki government is doing. They do a lot of great work through the political process, through legal channels, but I see that it's slow going, and sometimes I see that they have to kind of stop and start over again, meaning that when politicians come and go, you have to re-educate them. So sometimes you make progress, and then sometimes you have to start over again. So personally, it frustrates me to see that happening. So that's why I'm working with colleagues and associates and friends of mine, reaching out to other communities to kind of continue this process and keep it going, but on a broader and faster level. And so that's why we're creating a network and creating a movement that we're calling Love the Everglades movement. Some people kind of might want to look at that as a sort of ridiculous notion that we should love the Everglades, but I think when your actions are inspired by love, that you can achieve a lot. I mean, the reason that the mother is lifting that heavy 2,000-pound car off of her baby is because of love. Like, you can achieve miracles with that. And so I think that that's why we're starting from a place of love. Yes, it's urgent. Yes, there's problems. But let's not start from a place of fear. Let's start from a place of love. Love is going to inspire our actions. It's going to inspire our communications. It's going to inspire our art. It's going to inspire our activism. So that's what we're doing. We're reaching out to different communities. We're going to start with using the arts as a way of raising awareness. So we're going to grab people's attentions and intrigue them with the arts. Once we have people's awareness on the matters, we're going to continue with the educational workshops that we're doing. We're going to continue to expand the message to different communities, and the overall goal for me anyway, because my friends and my colleagues have other goals too, and I respect that. My goal is to help facilitate people's relationships with the natural environment. Like the whole Love the Everglades movement that we're cultivating, it actually grew out of a series of field trips into the Everglades. We've taken over 100 people out there in the past 6 to 7 months. And once people get out there and see what's going on, their hearts are moved. And so that's how this movement got started of Love the Everglades. We see the situation, our hearts are moved, and we're inspired to do actions. We like to do this on a monthly basis, maybe once or twice a month. But that's why we're also looking for support too, because we want to be able to support the airboat operations that we're working with to take our trips out there. So we need some financial support on that level to pay for those excursions, and also to print the materials, and also to make connections with the communities. So we need support on that level. It doesn't always have to be financial. If you can provide services or goods that can help us to achieve these goals, that's great. And also remember that we are a full spectrum movement, meaning that we work on the physical level, we work on the mental level, and we work on the spiritual level. So we also strongly believe in the power of prayer and ceremony to achieve our goals. So we seek support on a variety of levels, and we'll do the work on a variety of levels. So if you want to come out there and see for yourself what's going out there, reach out to us. We go out there on a monthly basis, like once or twice a month. If you want to come out there, let me know. I'd be glad to show you around. I want to remind people that whether you're talking about the Everglades in English, or whether you're talking about Kahayadlit in Miccosukee, we're talking about the same thing, which is the quality of the light reflecting and shimmering off the waters out there. And so come and see for yourself how beautiful the light is, and how fragile the water is, and how that impacts and spreads out through the life that lives there, underwater, in the ground, in the trees, and in the villages of the Miccosukee.
Thank you.